Dr. Kenigsberg has been a huge early adopter, early pioneer, and he's done a lot of work through the ACC in that space.
In 2007, opened a private practice as a sole practitioner doing cardiac electrophysiology out of fellowship. Kind of a daunting situation at the time to just electrophysiology procedures, like other procedures and other specialties, could be done safely in an ambulatory surgical setting. In addition, the American Hospital Association is the largest lobby in this country, especially in healthcare, and they don't want things to be moved out of the hospital. And starting January of 2026, CMS has approved ablations in ASCs. And in the 6 years that I've been at the center, now coming on 7, we've transferred only one patient to the hospital. If your interest is to get away from a hospital setting and maintain autonomy, then partnering with a hospital is not going to do that for you.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on the Cardio Real Estate podcast. Today we have an amazing guest and topic. So it's Dr. David Kenigsberg. He's currently in South Florida. The theme or the topic of this particular episode is ambulatory surgical centers. So Dr. Kenigsberg has been a huge early adopter, early pioneer, and he's done a lot of work through the ACC in that space. So, we have the privilege here of sitting down with him, kind of going through his journey. He was a very early pioneer and adopter of this, and kind of just learning from him, what works, what didn't. He's operated at a very high level, and he's an electrophysiologist. So David, a huge thanks for joining us. If you can tell us, a little bit about your background.
Sure, I really appreciate the opportunity and very impressed with what you've been able to establish. So thanks for involving me and including me tonight. Well, I'm a cardiac electrophysiologist. I did my training in South Florida and Michigan and then in Virginia. And then in 2007, opened a private practice as a sole practitioner doing cardiac electrophysiology out of fellowship. Kind of a daunting situation at the time to just put up a shingle and try to grow a practice. But what I learned was, and what some older doctors at the time, more seasoned physicians, had told me is, I never met anyone who wanted to put in the hard work that was upset by starting their own practice if they're willing to put in the grit. And for a few years, I was by myself and then joined with a partner. And we began building a high-level EP practice in the northern part of Broward County. And then started realizing that electrophysiology procedures, like other procedures and other specialties, could be done safely in an ambulatory surgical setting. Keeping in mind that there's a throughput issue in hospitals, there's limitations of labs and EP space and timing and scheduling. And on the other side of it, physicians are constantly losing their ability for autonomy and their ability to be the destined to enjoy the work of their the fruits of their labor and decide on their destiny from a financial perspective. So both of those reasons together, I decided to look into how could we do devices at an ambulatory surgical center, and my partner and I embarked on a very long road to try to find the right place to do this. And actually, we made some major mistakes at the beginning. We bought a building, the ceiling height wasn't proper. It wasn't the right building, had to get rid of that, buy another building.
Yeah.
Long story short, we found the partner and we built an ASC and started doing devices in the ASC in April of 2019.
Okay, great.
And that was a very important time because as we were ramping up, COVID happened. And during COVID, we weren't really allowed to do elective procedures in the hospital, but the governor in the state of Florida allowed us to, with certain permission and filling out a form, do procedures in an ASC. And my partner and I got very experienced doing all kinds of devices in an ASC to the point where nowadays our practice 90% of all elective outpatient devices are done in an ASC.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So that kind of, put an idea in our heads of, okay, well, why can't we do ablations in an ASC?
Right.
And it all comes down to safety as far as picking the right patients and doing the right thing. And obviously, there are sick patients that have to be taken care of in a hospital. And that's the purpose, in my opinion, of hospitals, take care of the sickest of the patients. But someone like you or me, if we needed an ablation, I'd be happy to go in an ASC. I think you
Yeah,
probably would be too, as long as the
definitely.
operator was good and the center was safe. And so the problem was that Medicare was not paying for ablations in the ASC setting. I got together a number of years ago with some like-minded physicians. Arash Ariana out of Sacramento is an electrophysiologist, and Vijay Swarup, who's an electrophysiologist in Phoenix, who actually did ablations during COVID with a program called Hospital Without Walls
Oh, nice.
and had some experience. We got together and we said, we need to change the way things are done. Now, you mentioned the ACC. I'm the current president of the Florida chapter of the ACC. I've been involved in organized medicine for many years. The ACC actually was behind getting ablations approved in the ASC setting by CMS.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the Heart Rhythm Society at that time was not all for it. And their main concerns were actually valid. Their main concerns were safety,
Yeah.
first off. And second off, what's going to happen to the hospital when we move all these patients from a hospital setting to an ASC setting? Many electrophysiologists are academic minded or associated with academic institutions, and they were concerned about the hospital. In addition, the American Hospital Association is the largest lobby in this country, especially in healthcare, and they don't want things to be moved out of the hospital. So we had an uphill battle.
Yeah, to say the
Um,
least.
so we started an organization called the Arrhythmia Intervention Society, AIS, and we got together and we got some people from across the country who were interested in this topic. And we hired a law firm called Hogan and Lovells, and we worked with them to set a meeting with CMS and explain to them that we had good reason and good data based on all the data for safety and efficacy on devices as well as Hospital Without Walls that we could do this. Dr. Ken Ellenbogen, who's my mentor, was the president of Heart Rhythm Society, and he was gracious enough to get on board with us and have Heart Rhythm Society form something called Heart Rhythm Advocates. And their first thing that they accomplished was work with CMS and get ablations approved in the ASC. And
Huge.
starting this month, January of 2026, CMS has approved ablations in ASCs, and we're doing ablations in ASCs in Medicare patients, Medicare Advantage patients. And then, as we all know, once Medicare signs on, the
Yeah.
private payers sign on as well. And so, through grassroots advocacy, through people kind of coming up with an idea and getting together and like-mindedness, and a lot of sleepless nights and infighting and discussions and so forth, we were able to do something that I think benefits our community as electrophysiologists, physicians in general, and definitely patients. I mean, my
Yeah.
patients, and I'm sure you know the same thing,
Yeah.
they hate walking down long halls of hospitals. They don't like to be, in a hospital next to someone in the next bed with flu or COVID or whatever it may
Right.
be. So an ASC is a very safe environment for people to get ablations, and that's my little story about ASCs and ablations.
No, so I mean, a lot to unpack and just a lot of leadership. I mean, to say that's not impressive, I mean, that's the biggest understatement. So you mentioned that, you started practice in 2007 and then opened the doors officially on the ASC in 2019, right before COVID. And, there's a lot of learning to be had from mistakes. That's the best educator in life, hands down. So I mean, number one, I applaud your entrepreneurship and just, your fearlessness and just kind of getting out there and figuring it out, and then operating at such a high level. But can you take us a little bit? Because, if someone, somewhere in the country is even considering this, especially since doctors by and large don't really get any financial training or the hows or whatever, or a little esoteric. Can you take us through, conception of the idea and then how you started? You got together with a partner, but how you started maybe shopping, quote unquote, for a site that was suitable. What were you looking for? And then you mentioned already one lesson, the roof height or ceiling height or whatever, but what did you learn the hard way that culminated in
Sure.
your current center?
So obviously nowadays this is a very common question in talking to other electrophysiologists. I will tell you this is you need to have deep pockets to be able to embark on this venture, or you need to have financial backing of some kind of institutional money or
Yeah,
bank or something. Um, but more importantly, you need partners that have built ASCs, but
yeah,
not only ASCs that can do GI or ortho. You need partners that actually understand the EP business, as obviously our business involves mapping equipment and
yeah,
fluoroscopy and so forth. So um, the first step was the first step was the concept. Okay, I want to do this.
sure.
Then setting aside the amount of money I thought I needed for this, which was not enough. Um, and then figuring out where I was going to do this. Now, you don't have to buy a building. You can rent space. You don't
Right,
have to go about this on your own. There are companies that will build you a surgical center. There are companies that will partner with you. And if you look it up on Google, there you could find five. Or if you call me offline, I could tell you I don't really want to advertise these companies in this podcast. But
right.
um, there are people out there that are reliable that can do this for you.
Okay.
Um, I think having a partner that knows how to do that, the nuts and bolts of the construction, the regulatory, every state has different laws. There are certificate of need states and non-certificate of need states. Knowing those things are important. And I'll just mention in my own experience a few things that as an EP, and no, I don't have formal business training. I
Yeah,
don't have an MBA. As an EP, I wouldn't have thought about until I went through it. So, for instance, we buy this building, and I have this partner that's going to go through construction and get permitting, and he walks in and he goes, the ceilings are too short. There's no way you're going to be able to do this. So I said to him, well, what kind of building would be appropriate? He said, buy a defunct shopping center, a
nice.
defunct Publix or a defunct Walgreens or something. It doesn't have to be huge, but
Yeah,
those are the ceiling heights that could help in this situation. So
yeah,
that's one thing. The other thing is parking. You don't think about this when you have an office, but parking. So when I had my building, the building with the proper roof height, I didn't have enough parking. So I
yeah.
had to go to the city and get a variance for parking. That's something you don't think about. And
Got it.
that could have held everything up. And then you need all the regulatory bodies to come through. You need a CLIA license if you're going to have a lab. If you're going to do sterile processing, you have to have the ability to do that, or you need to use disposables. So they're doing this with someone who knows
Yeah,
is the right way to do this. It's the only way to kind of avoid very expensive missteps.
mistakes. Okay, gotcha, gotcha. And I guess for our viewers and all that, it varies obviously, between fields like ortho or gyne or whatever, but just ballpark figure or range of the amount of capital that you would guess in needing, and let's call it maybe like a two lab ASC,
I think in order to get in the ballpark, could you do it for more or less? Yes, probably. You're looking at 5 million bucks.
yeah,
Okay. To kind of outfit it properly, to go through the timeline, to, have enough capital to get it started and running. You're looking at about 5 million.
yeah, okay. And then now take us through, one of the cornerstones of ASCs is efficiency. You got to be supremely efficient. And what kind of have you learned from experience in tuning since 2019 with respect to staffing, staff training, kind of turnover for rooms, et cetera, et cetera?
The first thing I'll tell you is that my I pilfered all my staff from the hospital.
Nice,
So,
nice.
um, and it's people that I worked with and people that I trusted and people
Yeah,
that know what they're doing. So it's nurses, it's techs, it's nurse practitioners. I do all my devices in the hospital with anesthesia, but in the ASC, I actually use conscious sedation
yeah,
with a nurse or an NP. The patients come in, they get up, they walk out. It's
yeah,
much quicker.
yeah,
So getting staff you're familiar with and staff that are specific to your specialty. That's very important.
yeah,
So a nurse could be great, but if they don't know EP or they don't know how to scrub or the tech doesn't know how to scrub a device, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard to get them up and running. So
sure.
that's first off. The Turner, I have a lab right now with one room.
Okay,
I can do 6 devices in a half a day with no problem.
excellent.
Okay. Because the staff, I have a lot of pre and post areas, 4 and 4, but the staff know that the sooner we do the case, the sooner they clean the room, the sooner they get the next patient in the room, the sooner they get to go home.
Yeah,
And so, and they know that the center survives on its throughput.
yeah,
So people are vested in things going well, and I
yeah.
and I think from that perspective, it's really important to work with motivated people and people that have experience. Um, it doesn't take a long time to sterilize and clean a room in between cases. What it does take a long time is if you're in a hospital and you got to call the
Yeah,
cleaning crew and they're
right.
somewhere else. These
Gotcha.
these people are there and they're motivated. So that is part of the efficiency. Look, time is definitely money, but by the same token, we're dealing with cardiac procedures.
Yep,
Safety is paramount.
sure.
In 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 the 6 years that I've been at the center, now coming on 7, we've transferred only one patient to the hospital.
Excellent.
So, I mean, it's patient selection, it's the proper staff, it's doctor prudence and skill, and we take the time that we need to do the procedures, we do it safe, but yes, we are very efficient.
And what's the proximity of the ASC to like a hospital?
I
Is it?
could I could open the door and I'm a block away.
That's awesome. Okay.
So, I mean, that is a benefit of living in South Florida,
Yeah.
but there are ASCs that are 30, 60 minutes away from a hospital and
Sure.
other, locales. So, but that's just the nature of living in a big, metropolitan area.
And just to clarify then, so the staff, are they salaried or hourly?
Um, they're hourly staff, but they do get a bonus based on productivity.
Nice, nice. So you align incentives and you don't penalize them for being efficient and all that. So that's
Correct.
a genius kind of alignment of incentives. That's great. And then just talking, I guess, breaking it down a little bit, so any procedure has both a facility fee and a professional fee. The
Correct.
overwhelming majority of physicians are used to, professional fee and so on and so forth. Can you speak a little bit, I guess, about, you mentioned obviously ablations, which starting this month, it's a new chapter and all that. When you approach whether it's the Boston Scientifics or the Abbotts or the fill in the blank or whatever, how are you as an ASC then negotiating the disposables, the contracts with them, the imaging? How did you kind of approach that? Capital expenditures, et cetera, et cetera.
So, one of the benefits of having done this a long time, like yourself, is you know the vendors, you know their equipment, and you know the people.
Yeah,
And so I built upon the relationships I had from my hospital experience
right.
and met individually with each vendor,
Yeah,
each company, and try to understand from them what their offering was for an ASC.
Nice. Okay.
And to be honest, two of the vendors you could tell had zero interest in working in an ASC environment.
Interesting.
Their their model and the way they choose to operate is entirely geared toward a hospital setting.
Got it.
And so they are kind of off the table to begin with. And then we had the other two vendors that we kind of negotiated and dealt with. And at the end of the day, for me, the things that were important to me were ability to leverage CRM with ablation.
Yeah.
Okay, so um, if you use a certain amount of devices, you will get a discount on a service
Smart.
contract or
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
Um, so a company that has the ability to do both CRM and ablation to partner with was important.
Gotcha.
Secondly, a company that is able to do mapping and ablation and ice and all the things that we would need in an environment. So you're
Smart.
dealing with one vendor.
Yeah. Smart.
And the last thing that's really important to me, just I mean, the main reason I love EP is because things are always changing. I
Yeah.
like new technology.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to work with a vendor that had the ability and had the pipeline of new technology that I wanted to use
Gotcha.
and new technology that I'd like to use in an ASC setting, because I do think certain technologies are kind of niche and they're great to have, but they're not really, if you're going to pick one mapping tool, that
Yep.
may not be the right one for an ASC.
100%. And then with the advent of like ablations, so am I assuming you're going to be doing like Mac, for it, or are you going to be?
Great question. So, my approach is get some cases under my belt safely that really mimics exactly what I do right now in the hospital.
Sure.
And in time, peel back to
Yeah.
see what can be done safely in an ASC. So
Gotcha.
when it comes to anesthesia, we will do the first cases probably under general
Sure.
and and then slowly peel back, and maybe we'll get to a point where we're doing, PFA with a balloon PFA technology under conscious sedation at some point. But
Awesome.
that wouldn't be day one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's day 21.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, a nice measured kind of approach. I think super mature and very reasonable. So, no, David, I mean, this has been super, super high yield to say the least. It's great picking your brain and just kind of,
My
teasing
pleasure.
out. So I think maybe to, end things, if you're speaking to maybe someone who is remotely kind of somewhere in the US, strongly considering this, maybe they're in a private practice and they're thinking about, this year, next year. What are maybe two or three kind of pieces of advice that you would give them to kind of get them started?
Um, I would tell them that they should try to go about this with a partner that has experience in working in an ASC environment in their specialty. That does not mean they need to partner with a hospital.
Gotcha.
Um, but there are independent partners out there. That's number one. Number two is um, to understand before they take this leap what their tolerance is, what they plan on doing, but to also contemplate that what they do today won't necessarily be what they're going to be doing in a year from now. This is a process.
Yeah.
And if they're not at all scared or they're not at all trepidatious about changing their place of service, then maybe they're being a little too cavalier. So
Gotcha.
um, at the end of the day, safety is the number one driver here. And after safety is efficiency and all the other things that we looked at from a business perspective. But you got to be able to safely do this in your ASC setting.
No, I mean, well put, and I think that's the main focus. Now, you actually, I guess, one final question. You touched on it right there. So there's a lot of models that involve hospitals. Now, hospitals come in all shapes and sizes, all personalities, knowledge bases, you name it. What are your kind of thoughts on that? Is that a functional, potentially a functional model? What reservations or thoughts would you have with physicians pairing together with a hospital or something?
Well, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, one of the impetuses for me was to do this was to maintain autonomy.
Yeah,
And if, in my humble opinion, and others will argue with me, and I have had this discussion before, and I say this with humility, if your interest is to get away from a hospital setting and maintain autonomy, then partnering with a hospital is not going to do that for you.
yeah,
If your interest is you work for a hospital and you want to do this in a different place of service, that may or may not work for you. But I think that there are other for people who work in a hospital or they're private or they work for private equity, whatever your work environment is, I think you really need to understand what are all the models out there. Just don't go with something that you know
yeah.
and speak to people like myself, like Arash, like VJ, like a lot of the people around the country that have spent time studying this before you make that leap.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. No, no, thank you. I think that's well put, man. And huge thanks again, David, for your time there. I think we're both UM alumni, so go
Yes, go
Canes.
Canes. Yeah,
Heck of a season. But again, it's Dr. David Kenigsberg. Okay, he's in South Florida, and also, director there of the ACC, the Florida chapter. But huge thanks for your time, and
my pleasure.
thanks again.
Thanks for the opportunity. Go Canes.